and you feel about this small because you're like, visually, you feel like this small. You can be 6 feet tall, you still feel this small when you know no one. You go into a place and you know no one, you don't speak the language very well, and then your fears start contributing to that. And part of that fear may not even be your own, it might be the language that's spoken within the house because your parents are also in a state of fear, in a state of unknown. So a lot of the dialogue that happens in the house tends to be around, you don't realize that. We don't realize that. We don't identify it as that, but it is very fear-based conversation. And then we just keep moving. And that's what I was telling you, like it keeps getting
It layers up every.
low, 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 low. And now you can't see it. Just because you can't see my hand here doesn't mean it's not there, right? Like
Yeah,
it's still
yeah,
there.
yeah,
And then it's impacting everything else that I built after that. So
yeah.
here's this big pebble of trauma and pain and uncertainty and fear. Everything else that happens after that is going to be impacted by that.
Yeah, we limit. 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 Yeah, we limitless. Yeah, we limitless. Yeah, we limitless. Let the cease the day you gone, then you benefits.
What's up, family? My name is Rafael. Today, I am really, 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 really excited. We've been waiting for this for a long time to make it happen. So we finally made it happen. So today, I have the honor of having conversation with the founder and CEO of Kinetbet, Bethlehem Bekele. Uh, as my name is Rafael Bekele, we might even have to investigate that. Betty, thank you. It's an honor to have you.
I am so thankful to be on this podcast. I've been watching, like, when is it going to be my turn? What's happening?
I was waiting for you to take a vacation to Toronto for me to have you.
Listen, I know,
It has to
Maybe
happen,
we'll
by
do
the
a
way.
part two. We're gonna do a part two.
Yeah, definitely, it has to happen. And I at the beginning when I started this podcast, and I said it's like, a lot of people do it online, and I said like you can't really feel the connection through computers. Like I need to have people like face to face. That's how I started it. But I said, you know what? Just limiting myself is not going to work out. So like I have to spread out and then make it happen. When we get to the point where we can actually pay for the flight and hotel, then we do that.
Amen. We're
Yeah,
putting it
it
out.
happens.
We're putting
Amen. Yeah. When
it.
that happens, then we're just gonna bring every guest or we come or we go to them.
Absolutely.
Right? That's how.
I mean,
Um
I am gonna come to. I'm definitely coming to Toronto. So when that is a when, it's not an if.
yeah, so when that happens,
When
I
that happens.
think this humming thing, I'm just gonna mute and unmute every time that happens. It's
Okay,
gonna
we're
be a lot of work.
ready. You're ready for everything.
We
We're
gotta
ready.
make it work, yeah.
Yes.
So, in this podcast, usually people ask, what do you do, and things like that, and I have a specific one question to start with, which
Mhm.
is, who is Betty? Who is Bethlehem Bekele?
Ooh, listen, I should have done some research on you. um, Bethlehem Bekele. The I am statements. We're gonna get into that. I am a woman of faith. I am uh, I am a mother. Very like my favorite title, by the way. My favorite I am is a mother. Um, Most recently a poet. Someone called me that. I'm still
and
processing
and a
that.
good one.
I am an author. Thank you. I am an author. Yeah, I've written a book, but I said I don't want to associate the I ams to the things that we achieve, right? But I am a woman who believes in love being the center of everything. So for me, I think that's my I am. I am a mother. I am a woman of faith, a child of God, and I am a believer that love will save us all.
That's beautiful.
That's my I am. I should be
That,
ready, man. You should. That's an
that,
impromptu question.
and I gotta drop the bomb always. That's how
I
you.
know already at the beginning.
uh, so you've done a lot of things. You went through things, but the one thing I that you're known for, and first when we started when we met at the beginning was at Clubhouse,
Yes.
late night talks, and we're just a random Ethiopian and have a bunch of Habesha people from all over the world. With like we have it from like Russia to state to Canada to Europe and everywhere. And then you just came up with a room about gratitude, right? So,
Yes.
and then that's when I found out, that you are about healing, about being grateful, about reflecting on selves, and in just in general healing. Um, so I wanted to ask, when did it start? That it was something that you had, or is it related to something that you started it? When did it start it?
So the whole like feeling, oh, I can hear
So, the message.
no, the healing, let me put this on do not disturb because, all folks, nothing happens and then everything happens, that's what it is. So funny, I was never like, I've always had a lot of energy since I was a kid. I've always been like, this always very active. And I grew up in New York, like sister city to Toronto, right? Like busyness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I don't know what happened. Like you get into a certain age. I mean, I'm forever 25, obviously.
Oh, black don't crack.
But obviously. But you get into like a certain stage where your priorities start to change. And I remember at that time I went to California. I had surgery in New York. I mean, in DC, then moved out to California about a year later. And I started really to LA, of all places. But like being around nature, so many trees, I started like calming. Like there was a version of me that started becoming more in tune with nature, more present, more in my body. And then I moved, then I became a mom in 2019. And I'm a Virgin, the DMV, DC, Virginia, Maryland, for those people who may not. um, and I became a mom. And as soon as I found out I was pregnant, it was like almost immediate. Okay, what's going on? Who am I? Right? Like, who am I? What do I want to deliver? What do I want to pass to my child? How much do I know? I started asking these questions. Oh my God, when you start asking questions, you ask more questions, those questions get to more questions. And then I realized like there were a lot of things that I was carrying that I didn't want to pass to my son. Um, and so I started becoming more intentional, I started becoming more present. I wanted to heal, right? It shifted a lot. Those things shifted so many things for me. Being like September 21st, I'll never forget that. September 21st, 2018 is when I found out I was pregnant. And immediately my brain said, let's assess everything. Where are we at? Like, where are we at? What do you want to, what do I want to pass? What does this mean? And then when we met is actually in Clubhouse, is after I had my son. I had him before COVID. Then COVID happened and we were all locked down. And so I was literally in the midst of my journey, my own healing journey and my wellness journey. And and that's the inception, right? Like that's the origin story of how we're even to this. And the more I started working with our folks, the more I started understanding myself. I started understanding other people. I started becoming more compassionate with myself so I can be more compassionate towards other people. Um, and I was like, oh man, we have a lot of work to do. And like, how do I show up? What is it, what's in me right now that I can deliver, right? That's kind of where gratitude, gratitude time and mindfulness time started.
Awesome. How was your upbringing like? I'm gonna take it back in memory.
Man,
Yeah.
listen. I was born in Addis Ababa, and I grew up a little bit in Nassau, and then during the transition of government, we moved back to Addis, but that was like, no government power transition has ever been peaceful on the planet.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to say almost. So because of through that struggle, we lost a lot of stuff. And I didn't know I didn't realize until as an adult how much that had impacted me and the way I saw life. That's part of the healing journey. Kind of look back, you reassess. You don't look at things because at that time I was so young. But I still had active memory. So, and there were things that were like deep, deep, deep down, stuck. That you want to ignore it. You want to just keep moving because there are things outside of your control, right? When we moved to Addis, we moved back to Addis, and from we were there only a couple of years, and then the baby lottery, my dad won that, and we sold everything we had, a little bit of we had. And then we moved to New York, like New York City, New York, like in
That
the
is pretty
middle of the
straight
craziness.
from Addis to New York. It's like
Listen,
from
right?
like, oh, I'm okay, boom.
Boom, right. Boom, boom, boom. I actually remember we went in JFK, and I remember thinking, this is America. Like I was so disappointed because this was in the 90s, so like they were trash bags on the corners. I was like, this can't be this can't be. I don't know what I thought America was, but like
It's
that's
not
not
what you see in the movie.
that's not. What do you mean? I never saw Coming to America at the time, so that probably would have warned me a little. But it was not. It was not. I was so disappointed. I remember wanting to just go back again, though. But as an adult, I understood how much that change in itself creates, like, has such residual impact on everything. By the grace of God, I am today. I am where I am today because of those experiences. But there were some that were really heavy, like transitioning from a completely different country. I remember the first day we landed, we were in a really pretty area. Like there was a huge park downstairs from the building, and I remember going downstairs. I said, I know what is your name. That's the only language in English that I know. I went to Cathedral, so I got some words, but I was just like faking the funk, really. And this guy is like, said something. I
So
don't know.
Katira like Miss Kilo?
Yeah, that's where I went to school.
I went Macanius, so we were close by.
Yay! Shout out to all the Cathys. Please come.
Yeah.
Um, I went and I remember coming in and I was at the park and this guy said something to me. I don't know. I remember said, another guy comes in to tell me something about another. It's like he likes you. I don't understand what like is. Okay. I know love. You know what I mean? Like that's the only word you know. You don't understand. Right. So and I'm not even a teenager. I'm like a preteen at the time. And I remember saying, the only thing you could say, you're supposed to like be serious. So I'm just like, roll my eyes. I don't understand what he just said. But I go back upstairs, I ask my cousin, what does like mean? And I'm asking her. She's like, oh, it's like affection. And she explains it to me. She said, who said that to you? I said, I know, I heard it from somebody else. You don't out yourself now. Come on. I didn't know what the consequence was gonna be. But those are those type of moments, and then coming here, our hair was longer. People didn't understand. The 90s were not as kind as, for kids. We didn't have a lot of consciousness. We were not really aware. There was a lot of bullying that happened at that age because kind of you don't speak the language. We went into a very diverse uh, community, but still we were like an outliers because there weren't a lot of Ethiopians growing up, and those type of moments really do impact how you show up. Like my need to want to support immigrants, right, or support underserved communities, I think is rooted from that because of what I was going through in school that you couldn't really explain to people.
Yeah. So it's you had a long journey, different journey. How was the shock? And I know a lot of times when people
Ooh,
come in from, especially the culture,
yeah,
right? So you come from a culture, like for example, for me and when I say friend back home, what I know, like we're brothers. right?
Right. You like this,
They
right?
come home, they they go in to jump into the kitchen and then grab stuff, and then my mom like chasing them out with a broom. That's how we grew up, that kind of friendship. And I came in, the culture is different. The respect level is not there. The fear that we have for teachers. And I had a moment where the first time I came in, and then I think I told that story in Clubhouse when you were telling an old story where the first time I attended class, and I came in July, and
No.
like and then I literally took a 1 month of language school in the Ethiopian Association, and then I was thrown into high school, and I had no clue about English. And I'm not like we weren't like this younger generation coming from Ethiopia. They know fluent English.
Yeah.
And I remember like the teacher walked in, and I just got up and stood up. And then I had a very like mischievous best friend. He's from Dredaw.
Mm.
He came before me. He lived here for like 2 years before that, and then he knew what I was doing, but he didn't want to come. And then everybody looking at me like crazy. So there's that culture change and culture shock, and how especially you landed in New York. That is, and I came in Toronto from there. I wasn't even in downtown. I was like in a more settled area. How was that culture shock when you came?
I should have meditated before our. You got me
I'm just,
going. I'm
just
really
going right.
I think, or at least put some more frankincense. I only put one in, and I should have put like three. um, you, yeah. So New York, where we were, so we were, me and my frankincense. I say I don't play with my frankincense. I was
You
like, I
should have
don't want it to be too smoky, and I'm thinking, should have definitely.
you should have put some strong ones.
I should have definitely put like 2, 3 to remind me that remind me I'm here and not
Well,
in memory lane. Um, yeah, the so we ended up in Queens. So Queens is one of the most diverse places in the country, right? And I ended up in ESL, English second for a second
mhm.
language. And I think they call it ELA now. Aging myself. Uh, and
How was
and
ESL?
I remember our class consisted of um, Asians, Chinese, Korean, Indian, Pakistani. Like I remember a few words that they've taught me to this day that I've never forgotten because of those classes. And in that bubble, with Miss Chen was our teacher. She was also Asian American. Um, but in that classroom, I felt like I belonged because everyone was just so different. So you didn't feel you just were like part of the difference, right? But outside of that, there is a sense of like you're otherized automatically. Because like I said, people don't know where to place you, especially at that age when you are a preteen. You're trying to build your identity, right? Like that is literally when our brain is trying to understand where we belong in the grand scheme of things. And I remember feeling lost. Like we went to church on Sundays and we saw Ethiopians then, but my sister and I were always the only Ethiopians in the class. And let me tell you about the culture thing. So we used to give each other a kiss on the lips because we're
Yeah.
sisters, and that's, I don't know, culture. Um, and I remember people are like, no, 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 we can't do that. We're like, when we don't know anything. I literally preteens, okay. Um, why not? And then obviously they told us what it seems like to them. Right? And that's a part of my innocence at that moment
Mhm,
that was
mhm.
taken. Because for me, that was our moment to connect. Every time we saw each other, we gave each other a kiss. And we were told we had to stop that. So and coming in from a culture where you're listening, it's a very communal, our culture, Ethiopian culture is very communal. Like a lot of African cultures, a lot of um, Spanish cultures too. We're very communal. So the US is very individualistic unless you go into like the subcultures.
Yeah.
And you kind of lose a piece of your identity, because
A
part
huge
of
piece
our
of,
identity,
yeah,
because
yeah.
part of our identity is created or assessed in relation to the grand scheme of things. And so when you don't feel like you belong in the grand scheme of things, or you have this little corner by yourself where you're not really merging with somebody else, it is very daunting, very lonely. It's tough. It's really tough. And again, I talk to a lot of youths now, especially in kind of this is going to be um my next focus is going to be working with immigrants again. I haven't done
Mhm.
that in a while, but helping them realize like you do belong. This is not an accident. You are not like you're not a burden. You're not, because you do feel like I remember feeling like I was lost. I remember feeling like I didn't know, nobody spoke my language. At least in the classroom, for example, everybody else spoke the language,
Mhm, mhm.
or at least a few people, but no one spoke Amharic. That is my first language. I mean, I still speak it to this day. I write, I read, um, but not feeling like you belonged was a very lonely feeling. And then also, teaches us like identity is. No one teaches us that identity is multi-layered. Like it doesn't have to be one or the other. We don't talk about that, and in our culture, it's usually all or nothing. Either you succeed or you fail. There is no
Mhm.
pride, and so you've gone further. That is not usually acknowledged or
Yeah,
supported.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I remember feeling so lost, and that resulted in me after college. Like I felt like I was always reaching. I was always reaching. I was always reaching for this elusive form of feeling like I belonged. I already did belong as an adult, as a person who's processed that, who's healed in that process. I know that I belonged in any room that we go, and we always belong. But you don't realize that because you think this is the status quo, and I don't quite fit that status quo. So I'm on an island by myself in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in college, after college, I remember I grew up in a very diverse culture, and I went to only Ethiopian stuff. When I went to LA, I only hung out with Ethiopian. It was a need that I had that I
Yeah.
was trying to fulfill, right? Then I moved to DC, which is like it's like second Ethiopia. So
Need to hang
and
out.
I think but here my son is in a he's the only Ethiopian in the classroom
Yeah.
right now. But they accept his culture. I have stuff, books in there for him. I have stuff in the classroom for him. I go in there and I talk to him, I speak to him in Amharic. So he knows that you don't have to choose one identity or the other. You can do both. But yeah, for me it was really confusing and really lonely. Especially when even though my sister and I went to the same school, we didn't see each other because we're in two different grades. And I'm a social butterfly. We've never met in person, but you already know. Like I've always been a social butterfly. I'm an extrovert, and not being able to be that fully, you can imagine,
Oh
that,
yeah.
yeah, it's very
It takes away a lot.
it's very suffocating. Let me drink this water because you're on these streets making us go through stuff.
I should say, okay, let's visit back.
Let me know you feel. No, and
No,
recording.
it's it's actually you activated this kind of question because you always speak about finding out you're hurt, finding out where you traumatized. And then the funny thing is that the thing that um most of the time the thing that you think it's just a minor things and or is irrelevant are the thing that actually give us trauma and we don't even know it's subconsciously sitting there and
Yeah.
you're trying to find out. So um the moment that when I joined your clubhouse, gratitude morning,
Mm.
is when I started seeing like there's so much that I have that people don't have. There's so much that I started to the point I started feeling guilty for having it when I'm not any better than anybody else, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's huge. So the reason I was asking you is like because when I was talking to you about the culture change, um, uh, the whole topic of, as you already know, limitless is kind of bringing people up to a place of no excuse, right? So, which I'm doing the same thing for myself, right? I'm not telling people because I am there and I'm saying like, come and join me. I'm taking the journey with everybody else. Um, I There's a lot of Africans, especially Ethiopians, who have, especially in Ethiopian culture, we have this high expectation, unrealistic expectation when we come to North America, and then on top of that, you have this as a culture, we're very social, right? So when you come in and that just dead stopped, and then on top of that, you come in and it's completely different. You have to adapt. Um, and then you have to change your work ethic, the way you think, the way you function, the way you interact with people. It's like completely, you have to be a different person. Um, what is the level of trauma that, from talking to you or from your personal experience, what is the level of trauma when it comes to that? And we don't really see it most of the time. People, when they talk about trauma, they talk about personal trauma, like abusing or whatever.
Yeah.
But they talk to me about that, like.
Communal problem. So, it's interesting because you just said so many things, and I'm just like in my head, I'm like, listen, man. Listen, Betty, just listen. Do not listen to the whole thing. Because excuse me, because one, I think the age that we come in. So you're saying like we don't define it as trauma because there are certain things that are accepted culturally that we don't like moving forward, right? Enduring, resilience. These are the things that we consider as a form of strength within our culture. Because historically we had to endure so many things. We had to endure and survive so many adversities, right? Internally within the country, internationally. And so that kind of becomes embedded in the culture. And that's not just an Ethiopian thing for sure. It's widespread on the continent, like you mentioned, And that there's that, like that's kind of the norm. And then you come here and that's survival mode is not something that is highlighted, right? Thriving is the goal. It's always like that is the destination. You work towards that. There are things, there are paths. And that in itself has its own level of challenges. Obviously very different for immigrants. It's very different from people that grew up here, that are Americans, right? And hyphenated Americans because they have their own struggles. Honestly, you and I talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
There's a pre us. There has always been a struggle here.
Yeah.
And when we come in, because we have multi-layered identity. Until we speak, like they don't know us, right? They don't realize that we're immigrants. And the moment they do, there's another layer, like it's a new door. Oh, you're an immigrant. Open door to struggle. It's a completely different type of. You enter here,
Yeah.
and I think the crucial thing is the age you come in does make a huge difference, right? So I came in a very transitional period. So if you came in like earlier on the years, like three, 2, 3, you're just about to start making active memory, right? Building active memory. You really don't understand yourself in the grand scheme of things. Around 3, 4, 5, 6 is when you start. 3 is when we start building uh, active memory. So you will start remembering certain things, but you won't be as impacted if your immediate circle, your immediate environment is protected, right? So you can be sheltered in that, and you probably won't understand that concept until you leave the house and you go to school, and then you'll start being exposed to it. Obviously, sorry, did I? Um, um,
Is agree.
that's
The
like he's
belief
like,
is agreeing with you.
are you agreeing, darling? Yes, I thought so. Um, and then, but when we come in like preteen years, early teenagers, this is when we are building our form of identity. So that feeling of loss that we were talking about, that has a huge impact, right? Someone who comes in around 7, 8 years old, same thing, because again, you're coming in, you don't understand the language. you all of a sudden had this whole community, a whole like we're again, communal culture means the whole community raises you. It's not just one, you're not just your own parents' child, you're the child of the community. And you have your friends in your circle, you have your routine, all of that being abruptly changed. It's so tough. And then when you're coming in at a younger age, you are lost, but because most likely the people that came with you are also struggling, right? They're also struggling. Even if they speak the language better than you, they no longer are parents. They no longer have a support system. They no longer have anyone with them either. So they don't know how to support you because they're also struggling with you, you know? So they don't know how to help you process that. They don't understand because they also are just and for them, the hardest thing is now they have to work and now they have to earn money and now they have to, and so when they're literally in survival mode, they can't support the version that needs to be supported at that time during that transition period. And so I know that, that and that trauma, feeling like you're an island by yourself, coming in like you're saying, excuse me, coming in like you're saying from this very like group oriented circle to like ping, like removed immediately, no warning, right? Like your warning was on the plane, but most likely on the plane either you're anxious about flying or you're anxious about what's to come because you have no idea, no one is prepping you. No, we don't have these conversations. Everyone is just so hyped about you going to America, or Canada or Europe, wherever, that they don't tell you what is to come. And as a kid, I remember saying bye to my friends and realizing you don't realize that you're not going to see them for a while. Like the first time I went back was 12 years later. And I like almost like there after Tulu, I wanted to drop down to the floor and kiss the ground. So like that impact is so huge because it's like the blind leading the blind. Our parents, and also in our culture, like parents are, because it's very top down. It's like the elders are supposed to, but they're in this position that they don't know. They don't understand the financials, don't understand. You think everything has to be done with, like there are so many programs here that we don't know about when you first come. Transition of the emotional I mean, think about this: emotional trauma, mental, because of the changes, and how this ties into mental wellness is right around 14 years old is where our mental health can be diagnosed and actually impacted, like right around 14 years old, like the heavy hitters start coming in. So imagine coming in into a brand new place with no support system, feeling isolated, you don't speak the language. I mean, just layers after layers after layers. But because we're thinking, well, it's got to get done, we got to move on, we don't nurture this version that needs to be nurtured, with love, support, understanding. We don't do that. And then we just keep moving. That's what I was telling you. Like it keeps getting
It layers up.
low. And now you can't see it. Just because you can't see my hand here doesn't mean it's not there, right? Like it's still there.
Yeah.
And then it's impacting everything else that I built after that. So if there's this big pebble of trauma and pain and uncertainty of fear, everything else that happens after that is going to be impacted by that. That's the lens we continue to wear, and we never go back and reassess. We never go back and like see and acknowledge that pain for ourselves at the age that we experience those. And we're wondering, when we're in our 30s, 40s, some of us 20s, like we don't realize how much we've been carrying and enduring and continuing to go. And then we get to this age, we're like, I don't understand why I'm feeling like this. Well, most likely it's not from today. It's something that has been cloaked. And we've been focusing on keep going. We got to keep going. We we don't rest. So we got to keep moving. We got to keep. And at some point, like literally our brain changes, our emotions change. Just with age too, you start reassessing. Like I'm in my 30s now. That's the real truth. I have Wellski's in 30s.
Correction 25.
25. And I moved to 27. 25 was just kind of weird. You know,
It
like
was, yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna
too
throw people off.
expired.
27.
Yeah. You should say best before 27.
Damn it. We don't. This is a judgment-free zone. We're not gonna talk
I
about
can't, I can't believe that came into my mind, but yeah.
that. But yeah, so that's and so for those people, by the way, who came in older, right? So you've finished high school, let's say, or you're entering high school. My God, the high school culture is so big. Like that's what you used to do. You just came in, you said you had a little bit of time, then you went into high school. Literally, high school, especially in this country, I don't know how it is in Toronto. I'm pretty sure it's the same across all nations. If you are the newbie in high school and you've never met anyone that goes to that school, like imagine, I want people to understand this is part of what I work on is storytelling, right? And creating an emotional awareness and connection for people. Imagine you're walking into this, I don't know, 500, 2,000. My school had like 2,000 kids.
Yeah, same here.
Right? It's a pretty high. You imagine going in there where majority of those people, because for us it wasn't a zone school. Unless you applied for a specific program, you'd go within the area. But because we were so sheltered, right? Like our parents were trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
us, so there were a lot of very rule heavy, and I'm thankful for it. But it was very rule heavy, and so we didn't really get a chance to get out and meet people. We met other. There was another one family, Ethiopian family within our community at that time, and they were boys. So we're all girls, so you can already imagine like the rules that were on there. So we didn't really know anyone even if we had gone into our neighborhood um, high school. I went away. So imagine someone that's coming in and you feel about this small because you're like, visually, you feel like this small. You can be 6 feet tall, you still feel this small when you know no one. You go into a place and you know no one, you don't speak the language very well, and then your fears start contributing to that. And part of that fear may not even be your own. It might be the language that's spoken within the house because your parents are also in a state of fear, in a state of unknown. So a lot of the dialogue that happens in the house tends to be around, you don't realize that. We don't realize that. We don't identify it as that. But it is very fear-based conversation. And then fear has its own, the cortisol level goes up, stress goes up, anxiety, depression comes in because you're feeling lonely. And then emotionally that's never addressed. You feel like you want to escape, but you can't because education is so important. You can't leave. And so you keep struggling and moving forward, struggling and moving forward. And the thing, I think the biggest thing that we don't talk about during this process is grief. Like we're grieving the loss of friends, grieving the loss of our circle, our support system. We're grieving, and grief has like it needs its own attention, like its own space. We don't talk a lot about that, and you can't get rid of grief. You can't erase it.
Yeah.
You just continue to build new memories, right? But what is that new memory? What are you building? Until you can find your own circle, until you can find connecting, grief, you're not building much. So the grief just looks so heavy. Just looks it's so strong. Yeah, and we don't, a lot of us have never gone back and like massaged that section of our experience, right? Like we didn't give it love, we didn't acknowledge it, we didn't say, hey, oh my God, I was carrying it. And so now we're wondering whenever we go into a new space, why do we feel anxious? Why do we get nervous? I'm an extrovert and my butterflies kick in. And I acknowledge, oh, I'm nervous. Not I'm not gonna talk to a wall, honey. A rock. If a rock, I could talk to anyone.
Bring it to life.
You know what I mean? I'm like, what's going on, buddy? Let's give me a high five. Like, uh, but it is very scary because that pattern of thought still in my mind, even though I'm so much better at communicating with folks. I'm so much better at whatever. And especially if I'm hungry, honey, this is not gonna be good. But I know my level of trying is so low. But that's why a lot of us struggle, right? Like we struggle as adults because of that. We've never processed our grief fully. We've never acknowledged the things that we're missing. We've never told that version of us, the inner child, like, I see you. I see that you're struggling. I appreciate that you did the best you could with what you had.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love you. Like, I love you. I'm sorry. I forgive you. Like, you know what I mean? We don't say that to ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think that's a big thing. That's a big deal. That's a
How
very big.
it's you know, there's like 1,000 question that is coming, and I'm like, because I think we'll sit here and it will be like the night
Tomorrow.
version of
Right,
Clubhouse.
24
Yeah,
hours
if
later,
we
right?
if we keep going. So let's say, you talked about healing, you talked about, this trauma of things piling up and not knowing,
Mm,
whether we have it or not, right? And as you said earlier, you get to late 30s, 40s, sometimes 50s, some habesha comes, it's in general in immigrants come in late in their time. And if you come to realization, for example, like people, they come across you and then they find out like, oh, I need to deal with me.
mm,
And I'm like thinking about it, it's like, this is like onion layer, like layers up your layers upon layers upon layers. And how do you advise to someone for them to go back into, really, for let me give an example.
mm,
It's something that I just, I've been in the past year, and especially, when I listen to violence and everywhere, war, people dying, and sometimes I'm sitting down and we become very desensitized about
mm,
people dying. Another person died and you move on. And I remember when I was at the age of 4, it's a gift, also a curse at the same time, because I have a very detailed memory of my childhood since when I was like 3, 2.5. And I remember walking with my uncle. This is very graphic. If whoever's watching this don't want to
Warning,
listen to it,
warning.
warning. Yeah,
Take a deep breath,
I
pause.
was walking, and I saw this. Later, I heard that they were brothers, and I remember that we were walking outside, and one brother was chasing another brother with a kitchen knife. This is back home in Addis, and he stabbed him right in front of me and killed his own brother. And then later I heard that his brother was cheating with his wife. Imagine that, at the age of 4, I'm hearing all this. I'm like,
What happened as
yeah,
an adult? I'm like,
yeah. All I heard is Kamistugata and Yutono,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then he stabbed, and I was like, yeah, okay. That time I didn't understand what it is, and passed. And my uncle snatched me, and then we walked away. And every time when I hear about it, about murder, that thing just keeps coming as a memory, keeps coming back as a memory. But I never thought of like anything. And then recently, I'm like, I was talking to myself. I said, I need to deal with this. Like, I need to really figure out what is it doing to me.
Mm,
Um, so how I'm giving that an example for people to realize there are things that they think is something small, can bring a huge trauma and impact in their life. So how do people deal with that kind of layers of trauma that they might even forgot about it,
yeah,
right? So I'm 37 now, and I saw that when I was 4. So
yeah,
um imagine the length of year. And so
yeah,
what do you think people could, especially in our culture?
yeah. So, it's so true. I'm sorry you went through that. I really am because, yeah, I'm imagining you are about the same age as my son is now. So I can't imagine what that was like for you. I
Mm.
can only imagine like it was confusing and you're being inundated with new vocabulary and you didn't even, like you said, you don't even know what that means. And the reason why that's so crucial is our brain literally, it assesses, takes about 6 seconds to assess what's going on in our environment. And then it also then once it assesses, it attaches it to a previous experience. That's why you're saying anytime I hear that because it says, oh, what is this? Okay, this is a new data. What is this data? Let me look at it. Okay, I'm going to now attach it to whatever I've seen before. And then from there comes the emotion that was attached to it at that time. And then after that, we start having our feeling. of that situation, right? So that's why I'm thinking like, of course it's going to impact everything else. Even though you may not have it, you may not understand the actual action, but you may have you would have had an emotional response. Whether it's shock, right? And I don't know what was done at that moment to help you process that, right? Like so I watch TV with my son now. I literally sit down and watch the cartoons with him. And there are a lot of like Disney related stuff I don't let him see because they're doing too much. And just in case you want to get
Yeah,
sponsorship from them,
same here. My daughter's limited.
we don't do that around here. He's not ready. I'm not ready to tell him. And then there's a lot of conditioning with colorism and stuff, especially the older stuff. So I try not to show him a lot of stuff. Um, But when you are asking me specifically to answer your question, what can someone do? So first, acknowledge. I think acknowledging is it's not the first thing. When I say acknowledge, I'm not saying acknowledge that I have done these things, right? Or I've gone through these things. That's so tough to do. Um, but just be curious, right? Curious, compassionate curiosity. Practice that with yourself. Whenever we are seeing something, just ask why. Why did I respond to that? And you will not and anytime I talk about these things, I want to talk about the science behind things or the facts behind this to help us understand it instead of saying just do this to do that. One, I just explain why the brain does what it does and why it's so crucial for us to unlock a lot of those things to help us reprocess, right? Rewire the brain. We need to reprocess that with the adult brain because when we're young, our brain capacity is so different than when we're fully developed adults. And so you saw that process, you saw that information at the age of 4. Whatever capacity of brain capacity you had at age of 4 is how you processed it. But the emotions from that moment impacts everything else, right? Like that's why emotional awareness is so necessary. Why am I having an emotional response to these situations? And you're like, oh, the reason is because to your point, like I'm telling that you're very lucky because you remember things. There are a lot of people who don't understand. They don't get it. Like you said, a blessing and a curse. I don't want to say you're lucky, but it's a blessing and a curse. Part of the blessing is that you can identify, and then the curse is you can identify. Like you're gonna keep remembering.
It goes both ways. Whether it's a
Both
trauma
ways,
or a
right?
beautiful thing, yeah, you won't forget it.
You're like, I don't want to remember this joint anymore. But even if the memory comes in, this is where like mindfulness, meditation, these type of activities help because the memory can come in and you can see it and not give it space. You can acknowledge its existence and not give it space. You can just kind of let it dissipate into the background. You can like you can take some deep breaths once you start understanding these heavy emotions. You can start taking some deep breaths, grounding work, right? Um, Remembering, and this is why I said about the frankincense, because frankincense literally helps us be present. Reminds you that you're here. You're not in this emotional space, and that's not really what's happening in the reality. That is just what's happening internally, not externally, right? It helps you kind of process that. How can we so when we were talking about these things, how can we do that to answer your question? So first was we acknowledge the brain. Second was um assessing like why the impact of the past have what impact that has on our present, right? And then there was another thing I wanted to tell you that I'm forgetting about now.
By the way, I was afraid to ask the question because it's not an answer that we can get it in this
No,
conversation. It's so
no.
huge. One of the reason that keep the train of that. I don't want you to forget it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the reason that I wanted the second take and the and 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 for us to have a second part of conversation, even more third, fourth,
We will.
is because of this situation, because of this kind of stuff. It's a long conversation, and
Yeah.
even just to talk about this question that I asked, the process,
One,
it's huge.
right,
But
exactly.
but
To have
I want people just to at least
take
consider
something.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
consider it. Go ahead.
So I want to, so the practicing compassionate curiosity. compassionate curiosity, meaning be compassionate with yourself when you're showing up the way you're showing up, when you're having these type of responses. Be compassionate with yourself. Be compassionate. And if you can practice that, you can be compassionate with somebody else, right? Like understand that this is happening as a result of something else. It's never just surface level, right? And then, this is the part I want to tell you. Like our brain can either be an emotional state or a rational state. It can't do both. So when we're in an emotional state, literally our emotions are very much activated. And so when they're really activated, it's so tough for us to think rationally about the situation, i.e., assess. Why am I feeling like this? Like that's not the time to do that. Even though most of us have been conditioned to just fix things or disregard our emotions completely, the right action is like feel it, feel whatever you need to feel now. There's this thing I tell my son that I'm also active. I'm actively also learning. You can feel your feelings, but you cannot hit. Like, so the feeling is valid in its own, but the response to the feeling, right? The response to, so when kids are angry, they don't know what to do. So there's this ball of energy they want to hit. So part of the conversation we have is you're feeling angry, and that, I validate that feeling for him. When we talk about it, I said, you can be angry, but you cannot hit, right? So how do we find a better way to express that emotion, whatever that emotion is, whatever that feeling is? And this is where like diaphragmatic breathing, deep breathing, going back to yourself, helping literally when we breathe deep, slow breaths, our brain gets this thing that says, oh, we're not in danger. Cortisol level, you need to calm down. Like these literally it just tells us everything is fine. If
Yeah.
you hear me, if you probably see me breathe so much
Yeah.
as we're talking, because I'm reminding myself like this is a conversation, not I'm not reliving, I'm not walking through whatever these emotions are. Also, the caffeine I've had is also spiking up. So I'm telling my body, like, I need you to calm down. That's why I keep drinking the water. But so it's either emotional or irrational state. So when it's an irrational state, this is why I'm saying when you're in an emotional state, we need to learn to practice to feel our feelings. Like just feel it fully. Give it space, hold space for our feelings. Like we need to just let it be. I can't believe I'm getting angry. I can't, no, believe it. It's happening as a result of something that's underneath the level of whatever triggered you to have this emotional response. Right? So once that cycle of feeling kind of dissipates and you start getting into your rational state, then that's when the compassion and curiosity. Why did I do that? Like, what was the specific thing? And don't try to go to like 15 years ago. Just get to understand what triggered it at this moment. And then from there, you're just like, but why should that moment upset me? And then you go to the next layer, go to the next
Yeah.
layer. Then
Yeah.
people try to cut like the onion. You're not going to do that. We've been experiencing these things for
30 years.
several decades, exactly several decades untouched, right? And also like the trauma, the pain, the heaviness has morphed. It doesn't stay the same. It has
Mhm.
morphed. Every time you get another experience, it morphs a little bit. Another experience, it morphs a little bit. So that's why you can't just directly from here Superman vision your way through the core problem, because there are things, it just looks different every single time. It shows up different. Um, the fact that maybe part of our internal conversation has been fear-based with the intention of protecting us, it will show up differently. It will show up as an imposter syndrome. It'll show up as self-doubt, because your brain is literally, oh, and this is the other thing. Our brain's job is to protect us. It doesn't want us to feel this pain. So whatever it's going to do is it's going to give you a coping mechanism to stop you from feeling whatever it is you feel. It wants to be in a state of good all the time. This is like you're doing too much. This is too much. This is going to hurt me. So I'm just going to do these things to protect you, right? Like to protect myself. Um, but this is why like talking to someone, right? Even if it's not a one-on-one talk therapy, sometimes it could be a circle, a group chat like we did with gratitude hour. Like for
Yeah.
example, practicing gratitude is a huge way to like rewire the brain. Rewire the brain from the state of fear or state of a lot of these states that we've learned to process and like be the normal thing for us. We can rewire the brain that way. So there's more than one way um, to remove the layers. It's not just one fits all. It depends on the person. I can tell you, like when we were doing gratitude and mindfulness sessions, in those several months that we did, we were there for several hours. A lot of times people weren't like first time people didn't rarely ever came. You remember that? Like they rarely ever came up. They literally just stayed and they were listening because it needs time. You need time to get to a vulnerable state, to get to a malleable state because we've been told to be rigid and we've been told or we've had to be.
Yeah.
Strength was so rigid, so protective, so many walls. So the moment you start seeing other people become vulnerable, when I became vulnerable, with my experiences and my challenges, people will starts landing. That energy starts landing and they will start changing. So sometimes either, one-on-ones may not be great, but maybe a group sessions may be better, right? To just kind of help us have dialogue about the challenges that we have. And then maybe that first few times you're not going to be a speaker. You're just going to listen. And that's okay. The work is still being done. Just because it's not visible to you doesn't mean it's not be internally you start questioning.
Yeah,
Really,
if you're not used to it, it's really difficult, especially being gratitude, as you said, acknowledging it's huge.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, I was one of those people who stayed back for a while, and like I'm listening,
I
and
saw
then I said,
it.
yeah, I'm like this is. I said this is huge. Like this is huge for someone to stand there, and one of the things that I'm connect to that currently I'm trying to practice is looking in the mirror and telling yourself you love you and you're doing good.
Yeah.
And the funny part is like I can say all that. I can say you can do it as soon as the moment it comes to say I love you. Looking at the mirror, I find it so weird and difficult to say it, and so what you said, and I'm telling you, I think this is gonna be like
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
continuous sessions. It's
Yeah.
not just gonna be a podcast.
Yeah.
Um, like just a one guest thing. I think you're gonna become a regular now.
I'm so
It's a
excited.
must.
I'm
It's a must because it's a
if you did it, I
conversation.
would have been in your DMs like, Sure, what's going on? So good.
No, it's you see, it's because I know you're busy. You have a child. I know we're parent too, but um, you see this conversation especially, this is all about like when we talking about limitless, we're not just talking about physical for us to kind of come out of our limitation, but it's just healing because most of the time we're trying to run after the materials, after the success, after the business, whatever, but you're so broken inside that you need without fixing that you're just trying to like chase after empty things, and then majority of the time it doesn't work.
Right, right.
And so I think this conversation, it's a continuous, it has to happen. So I'm gonna cut it short
We
for.
have to listen, we're gonna
Yeah,
be here for 5 years. I told
yeah, exactly. And I wanted to ask you so many things and about about parenthood, about a business, about entrepreneurship, about all that stuff. But I'm gonna ask you one question that I really want, because I see you time to time, which you put the rest of us to shame, is when you're parenting when
oh,
your son, and even when you teach him language, like at this age, for him to like speak and read, like he reads, that's crazy. How old is he? 4?
he just turned 4 last
That
couple
is insane. Like
of
for him to sit down and read Amharic, that is insanity. Like
months.
it's it is crazy. And I'm like, I'm not even teaching my kids to speak their own language properly, and then you're teaching him how to read.
Listen,
And
they're coming for you. When they get older, they're gonna come for you.
I know I don't want that, and I don't want them to blame me for not knowing culture, um and I think, again, trauma. I think I took my own trauma um to transfer to them, because I think I spoke it before. The reason that the reason that I kind of distance myself from my own community is because of so much, hurt from my own community. And I think I spoke it the first time I came in Clubhouse. If you
Right.
remember, I couldn't even communicate myself properly in Amharic because I was so away from it. And whether I had businesses and was doing contracting here and there, and always the problem I had was my own people, not yours. And then about trust issues, about being betrayed and all that stuff. Like I said, hell no, and I just ran off to the other side. And then when I saw the community, and then also division, all that
Right.
politics, and it just became ugly. And I also saw it on my dad. Like literally, he used to have a migraine headache because he's so much for
Mm.
his own country. And he used to get involved into Ethiopian association, to Ethiopian community. And everybody worries about positions and being famous and having like a higher position. And he used to come home, he used to like pull his hair that he doesn't have. And
I was
I
like,
used to say like, why are you hurting yourself? Like, so I saw that. I said, there's no way I'm gonna do that. So I saw the other side of people like you, and making so much difference. And because of that, I think, and I pulled myself so much that it affected my children for me not to show them culture. So how you were very disciplined in consistent, showing your kid, teaching him about your culture, about his language. um how much did it take to to do that? And then also, how were you like so encouraged for you to continue to do that?
first of all, you gave me way too much credit, but I appreciate it.
You're doing what 90% of us not doing.
I think, no, I know for a fact, I knew that before I like to plan. I've always liked to plan things. It's not to the detail because, I'm a recovering type A because I'm recovering from that because type A is just a lot. So I kind of have a general game plan for anything that I want to do, right? So I don't ever go into the nitty gritty because nothing is ever promised, but I kind of have a general idea and then it allows me to pivot when necessary. But the non-negotiable for me was that he needs to speak Amharic, at least Amharic. And um, I'm sad that I don't speak some of the other languages from Ethiopia because I know my dad speaks a couple. He understands them anyway.
That's the sad part, because my wife speaks Oromic and I speak Amharic. They could have like a triple language.
Nice. Her, listen, I don't know what you better start today after this thing.
Yeah.
Um, but it does require intentionality. I'm not gonna lie to you. It requires intentionality. You need to be intent. What is your why, right? Like, and anything that we do, what is their why? For me, I know language is a building block in identity and forming of identity. Linguistic patterns are different in English and Amharic, right? Even the way that we describe things is very different. So I know that um what he says in Amharic and what we translate to in English, they're not always identical. So I have him doing affirmations. I am strong, I am kind, I'm thoughtful, I am loved, and I'm a child of God. These are I'm strong. Oh, and I'm beautiful. These are the 6 ones that I tell him, and I have him say them in Amharic and in English because I don't know what language his brain is going to be developing the internal dialogue in.
Mhm.
And so obviously it's going to be English because I'm starting to see the transition into more stronger English. He was only speaking Amharic before. He didn't understand a lick of English until like the summer before he started school. He just passed to PK4. And at that time, and he taught himself English, how to read English, at the same time that I was teaching him Amharic. I just opened videos and then he's watching games, and then the next thing I know, he's reading the stop sign in one way. And I was like, we don't know that's what it's. Why do you know that? We've never. He literally started reading as we are driving. I was like, I think you know how to read. I think. I don't know. And I didn't know he was self-taught until his teacher taught him. So everyone is different, right? Like,
Yeah.
but for me, the intentionality behind, I don't want him watching all these music videos and all these like shows and stuff with me because they come in. So those things are created. I need to know who created them. I need to watch them myself first. And any of these programs, I would only specifically look for Amharic programs online. Because of Chata, for example. So you could see that he loves it. Because of Chata, he loves the music that comes on. He want when he's with um his grandparents, my parents, he would like, give me the subtitle. I want to watch it, But I love that he could say that because he understands that and he reads the words on there. So that's a way for us to reinforce what I've been teaching him. I also intentionally would take him to the Ethiopian stores around here. So he can see other people speak, he can hear other people speaking in Amharic, he can see the signs and read them, and his form of confidence will be boosted when he's doing it,
When
right?
you're in the environment, it makes a difference. That's why
Exactly.
even when kids get sent back home, they
Yes.
learn so fast.
Quickly. And also they understand. I think there's this other thing that we miss. I don't want him growing up thinking this is my mom's language. I want him to know that it's not just me. You're not speaking just because I'm telling you need to speak. You're speaking because it's an actual language that people communicate in. And so seeing other people communicating that, seeing yourself and other people that look like you, like these 3, 4, 5 years, we're now creating at a certain level, we're creating a form of our identity at this stage. That's why I was very specific about the school he goes to. I got to make sure that his teachers look like mommy. Like I needed him literally, and it's a small school. Because I've seen what our society does. So there's a lot of intentionality. Then when we're talking about teaching language, what is your why? Like I said, what is your why? Why would you want to teach them? Like so that they can understand their language. They can still communicate if they don't understand, right? So I think we need a deeper reason. The deeper reason for me
I think
is
it creates identity too.
that's the biggest.
Yeah.
So when he's creating his identity, and why is that important? So like, right, why is that important? Because as he's growing up, he has to see his multi-layered identity. He was born in the States. He was born in Virginia, but he is of Ethiopian descent. He started eating injera poet the other day. Before he used to be like, ma'am, I don't like that. But he started to eat it.
Fortunately for my kids, sorry not to interrupt.
No.
Fortunately for my kids, they don't eat other than injera. Like it wasn't even intentional.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because my son, it took him a while. He can read the language, but he would like, I cannot touch it with my hand. I'm like,
two of my kids are okay. Like they eat everything else. But the last one, he's very picky eater. He doesn't eat anything. You bring injera. Oh yeah, good. Barasso, like he just wrapped it himself, and he's.
Does he eat just the injera by itself or with what?
Both. So with what we make it fit.
Yeah.
Oh, he eats it. But he loves the injera by itself. He just walks around and eats it.
That is like a signature thing. I don't know what it is, but I'm so happy I've taken pictures of him doing that. I want him to know how beautiful this is, and it's also like positive reinforcement, right? So every time he speaks Amharic, I'm like, wow, that was really good, Abaye. Like you're doing really well, and I encourage that.
It expands their knowledge and for them to it's so now they even in jobs now they start asking for whether you speak in different language because they want to be able to impact different communities. So
exactly.
It's very useful. As much as it hurts me for me to go quickly and then cut this conversation, are we gonna have we have only 10-15 minutes because as I said, I'm gonna go to my daughter's graduation after.
Parenting.
But one of the biggest thing also want to focus was this. Okay? So your poem impacted us so much. I mean, my wife read some of it and I read a lot of it. And I'm gonna I'm gonna go through it and I'm gonna try not to ask you the question because I know there's so much.
And we're gonna do another one, but I appreciate
no, this is not even like just a hyped promise. This is for sure that I want as quick as possible for us to do a part 2 of this, and then after that it becomes a regular thing. Your poem Ethiopia made me cry. Like I'm not I don't know what it is,
Much
but
it
I think it ignited something in
is.
me, um, and I read it and I was just filled with tears. I think it's because in the past, I think I would say definitely in the past year or a few years,
Few years, yeah.
I've never desired more for me to pack up and go back home. I'm in that position. And I think, especially after this politics, Russia, and whatever
Yeah.
happened, it made me realize that how much I'm missing in my own
Yeah.
country. And I'm sitting here, and you feel you don't, when you're growing up, when you're young, you feel like, oh, it's okay. But
Yeah.
as you get older, you start realizing how empty you are without having your own country. So
One of your
um,
own.
I'm quickly gonna read portion of it that it just took me back, and I think it's the third. Is it
Yeah.
called stanza? Or
Yeah, I
what?
think so. Let's go with that.
Okay, okay. Page 33.
Yes. I know what it is. I love that.
Oh no, I know them, the one page 33, page 41, and I can go, breathing, like I was listening,
Yes.
I was like reading them. I was like, this is crazy. Watching your children fighting, I'm sure has you crying. But know that we are all working with the focus of connecting. All the enemy has attempted to split. It is not the end, hung on tight. We're still in this fight to highlight our plight. And um, before that, when you mentioned about where we came from and everything, and it impacted, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna at the beginning, I wanted to ask question based on, like, each poem that you wrote, and especially the one really impacted me, and it spoke to me, for me to ask you, like, what was, how was your thinking, but we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
go through it later in a
You
in
go
a
another
bigger
one.
way. This page 39, I think it's for 99% of African diaspora living in North America.
Oh,
This is you addressed every person. I'm gonna read the whole thing, and it says, "Breathe. When the doors are closing in and everything seems bleak, when your chest starts to tighten and the knees start to get weak, when you can't see in front of you and you have no clue what comes next, all you need to do at this moment is just take a slow, deep breath." Um,
yeah. It's gonna make me cry.
even me reading it, I'm feeling.
Yeah, I know. I'm like as if I didn't write it myself. I thought, yeah. So, yeah,
um
emotional awareness.
this was like crazy. This was next level, and you spoke to people, and it doesn't have to be intricate, it doesn't have to be complicated. You made it very simple. You made it very um um relational with people's life, and I think you addressed it well, and I just want to say thank you for writing this. Right.
Thank you, my
um
dear.
it's a lot, as I said. um I'm sad that we have to finish it quickly.
But we
uh,
already knew you and I.
yeah,
Every time we talk, we're like
exactly.
insane.
It's
So yeah,
just huge things, and
yes,
I know it's gonna continue.
yeah.
um when 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 I read this, it impacted so much, and how much when you wrote it, and I know it shows that it was from personal experience, from life journey, and I just want to say thank you. And then on the next, I think on our next journey, we're beginning from here, and we're
Yes.
gonna dissect it,
Okay.
cut it, and whatever it has to. um before we close it, in this podcast, we have a tradition.
Okay.
So the tradition is that every previous guest, writes an encouragement word to the next guest.
Okay.
And the beauty thing for you, but the sad thing for me, is I don't get to read it until I read it for you right now.
Okay.
So the whole
Whatever
time I have
it
to keep, I can't see it.
is.
I took the encouragement, I mean the inspiration, from other place. So most of the time, unfortunately for this case, I'm gonna have to see it, because you're gonna have to type it for me, and for me to write it down for the next guest. But um, let me see. So this was written in June 10th. It says, "To whom this ends up to, you are not old nor young to pursue your passion. With God's blessing, nothing is impossible.
Mm.
Um, if you already know where you are, I pray God helps you. Then I hope I pray that God helps you with your journey. So I'm
Amen.
gonna read it again to make it clear. To whom this ends up to, you are not old nor young to pursue your passion. With God blessing, nothing is impossible. If you already know where you are, I pray God helps you with your journey.
Amen. Yeah,
Um,
this lands so well in where I'm at.
yes,
So this is
and it's funny because uh, most of the words gets linked, and then I remember when Dawood came into the podcast, and the person who wrote before him was talking about mindfulness
of
on
course,
the pod, on the podcast. We were talking about mindfulness, and it was like, so God is like putting things together. So
yes.
um again, Veti, thank you for being here, and I know we're going to continue to see each other.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about spirituality, we didn't talk about mindfulness, we didn't talk about yet being grateful in the
We're
book.
gonna talk about it all.
Parenthood,
We're
the
gonna
relation.
talk about
There's
it
so
all.
much that is going on. Yeah. And I'm gonna put this in the link in my bio on whether you're watching it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, you people can see, whoever watching this, you guys can go on the link and go buy it. You need to, if you are African diaspora, especially, you need this. If you're Ethiopian, that's even 1,000% more. You need this book, and I vouch for it with the 10 finger. Um, and I appreciate it for you coming in, and now, I'm looking forward to have more conversation in the future. And this was, I've never seen where I was doing podcast that I blinked my eyes and I looked at the time, is just it's
I know.
gone. And most of the time I plan my question based on where the time is, so I know. But I'm like, I listened, and I looked down. I was like, oh crap, like the time is gone.
Go to my kids' graduation.
Yeah, that's not gonna be good.
Congratulations, by
Especially with the person talking about healing
I
and
know.
trauma. I don't want to create a
Do
trauma.
not create that for your child. I do
Yeah,
want to tell you this
yeah.
before you close. I appreciate everything. Yeah, gratitude hour. So we have to. I'm gonna give you my gratitude for you. I'm so thankful. I know you were going through a lot. You were also reassessing. There was a lot of digging process. We talked about it in the past. I'm so thankful and I'm so proud of you as a sister, for you to have found this journey, your own path forward. I love that you are doing what you can. And I know you've processed grief and there's a lot that you've gone through. I just want to give you your flowers because
Thank
you're
you.
doing amazing work. Really, the fact that you're bringing people that are in this space to share healing words, loving words, mindfulness, these things through their own prism, not just knowledge, but through their own practices. This is huge, and the energy does spread. So you are you are definitely part of the network of healers and supporters that's going to get us. I think that's going to help us get to the next place. So thank you so much, Surya. I
Thank
really
you. It means a lot.
I
Thank you.
love you, brother. Always, you know that. That's how we
And
close it. You
I
may be uncomfortable, but I'm on these streets giving out love. So you're giving.
I love you too. No, I'm not those macho guys. Yeah, I went into a place
With
like
the
that.
beanie. I love that. I'm not the macho guys with the beanie on. I love
Yeah, I know, right? This is
it.
just a facade. Uh,
I love you, brother. You are wonderful.
Me too. Yeah.
Keep shining, keep doing your thing.
Thank
And for anyone who, I mean, I'm taking on clients now. So for anyone who wants to do like group work on these type of things, hit me up on kinetweek.com.
I was gonna say that. So, and I know that you do that. So I'll put the link in the description on YouTube. And I'm also gonna put the link and description on Instagram as I'm posting the clips. And especially if you're in DMV region right now, right? If you're in the DMV region, if you want to work with her, in regarding healing, regarding
Wellness in general.
wellness, go
Yes.
ahead. Yeah,
Yes.
anything, link up
Yes.
to her. and she's in
Listen, thank you.
at Kinetbet or Bethlehem on her other Instagram.
Yes.
So family, if you like this video and if you like our channel, and make sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification button, because this kind of beautiful thing will not be able to be notified to you unless you hit the bell notification. So, and on top of that, we're gonna have more conversation with her. So in order for you to continue to listen to this kind of conversation, you need to subscribe, like, and hit the bell notification. Again, thank you so much. And at the end of the day, I want you to be blessed and be limitless.
Thank you so much, sir.
Peace out. Thank you.
Yeah, we limitless. Yeah, we limitless.